Greetings everyone. Today in this video, we will explore an amazing fact that casts a shadow on the official history of our world. We will talk about the so-called ruinists, as they are referred to by official history. Let's figure out who these ruinists are. Today this term is understood as follows. Ruinists are artists who specialized in depicting ancient ruins, destroyed cities, and abandoned architecture. Their works often combined elements of reality and fantasy, creating romantic, melancholic, and majestic scenes of the past. But what exactly did these artists depict? Fantasy? Or did they capture the authentic reality they saw with their own eyes? It does seem strange to simply invent and draw engravings of buried and abandoned cities. Let's examine the engravings of perhaps the most famous ruinist artist, Giovanni Battista Piranesi. He was born on October 4th, 1720, in Mogliano Veneto, near Venice, into a family of stonemasons and builders. Piranesi was educated in architecture, engineering, and scenography, and he also conducted archaeological research, which is reflected in his later works. As we can see from his biography, Piranesi was a highly educated individual. Personally, I get the impression that such a person was inclined to document historical events, and he did so through engravings that are now considered merely fantasies. So, let's proceed to examine his engravings. Arch of Constantine. In this engraving, we see the majestic Arch of Constantine in Rome. The level of detail and the precise preservation of the proportions of the structure is astonishing. We see it in a neglected and overgrown state, surrounded by ruins and dirt. Domestic goats are wandering near the arch. It gives the impression of complete desolation, as if we are among the ruins of a once powerful empire. Just look at these depictions of emperors and pagan gods. It feels like people have only just begun to repopulate this place. But the most intriguing part is that Piranesi depicted the arch as being buried under dirt. Let's take a look at it today. As we can see, the arch has now been uncovered. In the engraving, the layer of dirt is at least 2 meters thick. It's clear that the arch had to be excavated. This is not surprising, as even according to official history, Rome was excavated. There are records of this process, including photographs and videos. However, there's another strange aspect. The people depicted in the engraving appear disproportionately large compared to the modern height of humans. This is particularly surprising given how strictly Piranesi adhered to proportions and details. Could this be a hint at the presence of giants during those times? Or is it just my imagination? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We will discuss giants in upcoming videos. Now, let's take a look at the general impression of Rome. All the streets are buried under massive amounts of dirt. Arch of Septimius Severus. In this engraving, we clearly see the Arch of Septimius Severus buried under dirt, as well as the surrounding street. The engraving conveys an atmosphere of desolation, creating the impression that the city has survived a catastrophe. There are hills of dirt and ruins all around. Now, let's compare this with how the site looks today. We can see that the arch has been uncovered. The arch stands at 23 meters high, and if we estimate how high it was buried, we can conclude that the dirt was piled up to at least 7 meters. Temple of Jupiter or Saturn. Here, we observe the temple now known as the Temple of Jupiter or Saturn. We can see the full scale of the burial. These are the columns as they look today, showing how deeply they were consumed by the earth. Piazza del Popolo. Let's take a look at the engraving of the square. As with previous examples, the entire street is covered in dirt, and the cobblestones are invisible. With a naked eye, one can easily notice that the buildings in the background appear disproportionately small, and they are clearly missing at least one additional floor. In modern photographs, we see the same situation. These buildings still haven't been uncovered, and instead, cobblestones were simply laid on top of the dirt. It seems that uncovering them would have required enormous effort. The Colosseum. Here's the Colosseum, buried under dirt, and here's how it looks today, excavated and restored, but the scale of the burial is still impressive. All these examples illustrate how Rome was buried under dirt, supporting theories about the scale of destruction and the burial of cities, which are reflected in the works of Piranesi. At this time, there was indeed a real boom among ruinist artists. How could it have occurred to them to engage in such a genre? The answer might be quite obvious. They were depicting reality. What is striking is the level of detail in these engravings, and it's hard to imagine how Giovanni Battista Piranesi created his works on copper plates. This method was called copper engraving. The process involved the artist drawing the image on a copper plate using a burin or needle, and then etching it with acid to create depth and texture in the lines. There is an opinion that Piranesi might have captured what he saw using photographs. The thing is, during his time, a device known as the camera obscura was already known. Great minds like Aristotle and Da Vinci wrote about it. In the 16th century, the camera was improved by adding a lens. However, historians claim that people of that era didn't know how to make the camera take photographs, so they simply traced the image with a pencil. But if we assume that Piranesi knew the composition of a photoresist, everything falls into place, including his astonishing productivity. This explains why his works are so precise, detailed, and incredibly realistic. Piranesi created over 1,000 engravings, and he lived for 58 years. Let's roughly estimate how this could have worked. If Piranesi started making engravings at the age of 20 and worked until he was 58, he had 38 years to create these pieces. I asked ChatGPT to make the calculations, and let's trust it. If we divide 1,000 engravings by 38 years of life, and assume he worked 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, we get approximately one engraving every 78 hours. So, roughly speaking, he created one engraving every 3 days. But that's not all. Besides working, a person had to earn money, eat, have a personal life, and so on. This is impressive. Just look at the accuracy in maintaining proportions and the detail of each work. That's why the idea of photographs seems quite plausible. Friends, thank you for watching. Today we discussed another mystery of the true history of the world and its oddities, which may point to a global catastrophe in the past. We will continue to study this topic. Thanks for watching until the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon.